all these things, none of these things would have happened if I had said no, if I hadn't gone. And yeah, the best stories are told when you are afraid, when you just jump into it. So.
Grayson, my friend, thank you so much for joining the first episode of the pod. I appreciate it, man.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. How's your day going so far?
It's good. It was a weird day trying to focus. Every day is kind of like, I don't even know, man. Some days it's like productivity is there, and then other days you're like, dang it, I didn't sleep good last night or whatever, and then the day just feels a little harder than it needs to be.
Man, I relate, man. I did not sleep that great last night. But we had a great night last evening. We had 18 people strong in my small apartment.
That's right.
And we've got quite a cool little group we've formed.
It was a good time.
Man. It's been really fun. It's been a blessing. I'm supposed to ask you whenever I see you, have you written today?
So for those that don't know, which is going to be everybody, I have a goal of writing every day this year. And no, I have not written today yet, but the plan is to come in and write tonight after we're done here.
Okay.
And yeah, thanks for keep checking it. Thanks for keeping on checking in about that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I'd love to know a little bit more about you. I know that you've had the chance to help write stories, create content. You've actually done some pretty cool projects. So I just love to hear like what you do, what you've done, and kind of how you got into video, story writing, all those things.
Sure. So I run my own video production company here in Nashville. Been doing that for about 1.5 years now. Wow. Before that, spent 5 years in the kind of Christian nonprofit media production space. And it has been a wild ride with a lot of different cool opportunities, a lot of different things that I've gotten to do. Honestly, everything that I have in my career at this point is totally because of other people who gave me opportunities and gave me a shot to do something that I was very unqualified to do. Whether that was, my first real film job, which was at my church, which, had several thousand members. It was a really big church, and they hired me on to be their like junior editor. And I only had about 3 other things that I had ever like shot and edited. And they gave me that opportunity, which was a huge blessing. Worked there for 1 year, which opened the door to an internship in Colorado Springs with a ministry called Messenger International. And I worked for them for 4 years and met some incredible people, got to do some amazing projects, making projects for fundraising events that literally raised millions of dollars for people all around the world to hear the gospel and to be discipled and to, grow, have materials and teaching resources for their churches. And then in the last 1.5 years, had the opportunity to work on some really cool album recordings, like the music videos for some albums.
Really? Any notable artists?
Hope Darst from worship leader up at the Belonging Coast. She did a solo album, and I got to work on help out I was running camera with the team. I didn't direct it. Yeah. That was the great Corey Reynolds, who's been awesome, and I've been able to work on some stuff with him. And then he had me out, and I got to do something with Ann Wilson, the Christian country artist.
Yes, she's great.
Yeah, I got to film her, I don't know if it was like a homecoming tour or like a homecoming show up in Lexington. That was a really fun shoot with a lot of really good people. And so it's fun seeing little things that I worked on pop up in my YouTube recommended
in your
list
own
or whatever.
algorithm. It's like, hey, I actually was part of that.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
But yeah, it's been a huge blessing for the opportunities that people have graciously offered to me, and now I'm looking forward to being able to kind of bring more people up. And as I'm meeting more people and I'm doing bigger projects, have opportunities to create those opportunities for people to come up in the industry too. So
cool. That's cool that God just had his hand and just, starting you off, like, was it an internship at the church in Texas? Is that?
Yeah, so that was a job, and then an internship with Messenger International in Colorado Springs.
Got it. And now just doing big things, man.
Thanks, man.
That's so cool. And you do like video, you do editing, but then you also are a storyteller. Is that right?
Yeah, I got into this because I love storytelling.
Yeah.
And it started in high school with me and my brother and a handful of friends. We just wanted to make some goofy stuff. And so we started writing, we started producing. I was kind of the writer, director, producer. My brother was the camera guy and editor. And then as I kind of moved forward, I started learning more about the technical side. And it was that idea of bringing people together to tell a story, having a meaningful story to share with the world on YouTube or whatever platform it was. We ended up winning an award at a student film festival for best comedy. And so
you're a comedy writer.
Well, back then,
Okay,
I actually
I
that was one that I produced and starred in. And
you are funny. You're secretly funny.
But my brother wrote it. And he co-directed it, and our team collectively won an award for it. And so it was cool to make something that showed on the big screen at a younger age that people connected with and they laughed at. And it was just it was a really fun, really cool experience. And then I've gone to the other end of the spectrum where, I've traveled overseas and done short documentaries about, people who are doing amazing things, whether it's in Christianity or doing amazing humanitarian work in the face of just really intense, difficult situations, difficult places in the Middle East. And then I've made those types of films that have played for people and everyone's bawling their eyes out. And it's it's deeply satisfying to know that the stuff that you're making is having an emotional response, is eliciting an emotional response from people.
That's cool. What would you say has been one of your most rewarding projects?
Most rewarding projects. So in 2022, I had the opportunity to go to Madagascar, the country of Madagascar.
Wow.
And
have you seen the movie?
Yeah. Everyone was asking me, where are the lemurs? The big old, I forgot the name of them. It's not bonsai, but the trees with the really, really big trunks. And they have the really flat tops. Those only grow in a specific region of Madagascar that we weren't in. And it's actually a lot bigger than a lot of people realize.
Really?
And I was riddled with anxiety that year. And I had also been very depressed about a lot of things, of just a lot of difficult things that were going on in my life that year and things I was navigating. And so when the opportunity came and my bosses were like, we need you to go to Madagascar, I felt super unqualified, super inadequate, super insecure about going, just that I don't think my skills are there. I don't think I'm ready for this trip. I think if I go, I'm not going to create what our event needs. And I was terrified, honestly. And at first I told them no, and they tried to come up with a different way. Could we hire this person or this person? And no one else was available because we had to go in 2 weeks. The timing of the trip, it was really close. And I just prayed and asked the Lord what I needed to do and if I needed to change my mind and say yes. And the Lord ended up kind of showing me, honestly, through a movie, which was crazy, a movie scene that I was reminded of. And then a scripture of just I'll be with you wherever you go, whether you choose to stay or choose to go. But why would you want to stay? And I just realized I'm terrified of failure. And realized that no good story is told when hold on, what's the word there? No good story comes of someone who's just too scared to take a step and take a risk of into the unknown. Every story starts with a hero that is propelled by some catalyst into a journey, whether it's an emotional journey, a spiritual journey, or a physical journey. And by letting the journey change them and jumping into the risks and jumping into the challenges and the joys and the successes, they come back a totally different person. Yeah. So literally through that experience of going to Madagascar, hardest week of my life, we were on the road for 30 hours on literally the worst roads in the world. Wow. And got to tell this incredible story about this guy who was sharing the gospel all across the country. And then everything that came after that trip of, we were able to not only raise $1 million for missions and places and people all around the world at our event, but it was also so not only was it everything that happened that week, just such an incredible opportunity and amazing experience for me doing something that was so challenging and getting to tell this story with my director of photography. It was two of us that went out there. I was kind of writing, directing, conducting the interviews, and he was helping with the shots. And then everything that came after that, we raised a huge amount of money through that story and through everything that was going on at our Messenger Cup event that year, our annual fundraiser. But then there was also a large number of vehicles that were funded as a result of that story. They saw how difficult the roads were in that video, and they wanted to bring more vehicles to people all around the world. So I think it was something like 12 extra vehicles that we ended up funding and all these crazy things. And I was crying in the back and like had never encountered anything that powerful before.
Yeah.
And so I felt really deeply that like, wow, I'm doing the thing that I need to do. And this was also like a super cool, all these things, none of these things would have happened if I had said no, if I hadn't gone. And yeah, the best stories are told when you are afraid, when you just jump into it. So,
wow. So what makes a good story?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different thoughts about that for sure. For me personally, I think there has to be a degree of sincerity. And it's kind of this idea of like, we may not fully understand the difficulty of a character or story or a place or a time period, but as long as the story is conveying that like what's happening in the story, what's happening to the characters feels true and feels authentic, that goes a long way in telling a good story. I think a lot of movies these days are very used to like, everybody's trying to be really goofy. Everybody's trying to be really unserious. Everybody's trying to be even very like meta, where it's very like self-referential or just a parody, honestly. Even some of these big movies just become goofy parodies and they're not actually telling like serious, emotional, meaningful things. It kind of like loses the impact that a story or that film can have.
Yeah.
And so when you have a movie that's like a true story, like one of my favorite movies is October Sky, which came out.
I haven't seen that.
It came out in the 90s. It was like one of Jake Gyllenhaal's first movies when he was real young. And it's about coal miners in West Virginia in the 60s. And this boy sees Sputnik, the satellite, go across the sky. And he's just gripped by this dream of wanting to go to space. And in this podunk town where nobody really even knows science very well or math, he's learning all this stuff, overcoming all these challenges where his dad just wants him to go work in the coal mine.
Actually, I have seen this.
Dude, it's one of my favorite movies of just like the emotions between the father and the son and all his friends and the challenges that he's facing to like see this dream come true, this seemingly silly dream, but then he ends up transforming kind of the whole town. His dad has a change of heart, change of life, and there's just so much like sincerity in that story of just like it has such a I don't know if purity is the right word, but it's just such a it's such a heartwarming and like inspiring story.
Yeah.
So I think that really captures something. I think when characters are kind of based on something real, whether it's like a real person, like it could be a fictional character, but has grounds in like a real person, that brings a lot out. And that's something that I've kind of taken into my writing is like, as I write characters, I want there to be like an element of something that I've seen in real life.
Yeah.
So even if they're doing crazy things in the story, there's something to be said about like, oh, there's like this, I don't know, this mannerism that is like incorporated into the character, or this piece of backstory that is authentic because that's something that a lot of people resonate with or something like that.
Yeah.
So whether sincerity is a big one for me.
Yeah.
That I would say.
I like that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of like I like nerdy stuff, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings.
For sure.
And I'm thinking of like Marvel. Like I enjoy Marvel. But it does seem a little cookie cutter. A lot of the movies, it's just like you have like the expected type of humor, the expected kind of. It seems like they're following a formula. I don't know. I'm a songwriter, so there's kind of like a formula you follow depending on what genre you're writing. So I'm assuming they kind of have that for like scripting and for writing. But yeah, when you have like a movie that's just authentic, that people can like the everyday person can relate to, that makes for a good story, huh?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
That's cool. So you as a professional in the, what would you say, media industry? Is that the fair?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future of your industry going? Is AI going to like change things up? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
AI will it already is dramatically affecting the workflow, the workload of everything, where I kind of see AI kind of in two categories, where one is it's a tool that's helping a creator's life be a little easier. And then on the flip side, AI being used for actual content creation, and it's actually trying to replace an actual person doing a certain type of thing. So I see a lot of AI tools that are saving a lot of people time. So like for me, when I'm making reels for someone's Instagram or TikTok or YouTube shorts, it's very helpful to have an AI service that can come in and do all your captions for you. And you can prep the format and how it looks, and then it generates the timing of everything, goes in, clips it, done. That to me is something that, like, there's not a lot of artistry in captions.
Right.
Somebody may disagree with me about that, but I don't think there's a lot of artistry in captions. I don't think that like, I have zero problem with using that tool to help make that part of my job faster. But on the flip side, if I'm trying to make a video and I'm trying to be authentic, like an authentic artist, and then I go and use an AI generated clip from Sora or something like that, I am kind of compromising that creative integrity, because that's not something I made. That's something I put into a prompt that then searched the internet for a bunch of other people's work and then turn that into something that it says is an original piece. And maybe it doesn't for legal reasons, but it's like I took this thing which only exists because of the work of a bunch of other people, of a bunch of other artists that have posted things onto the internet.
Yeah.
And now that I'm passing that off as my own.
Right.
And I don't think that's cool. And I think especially in the film industry, there's a lot of people with the money, a lot of producers, and a lot of the big studios are kind of the mind where they see films and media as their product instead of as art. And when you see it as a product, you're going to go with the thing that you're going to go with the route that is the cheapest course of action. So if they say, well, why hire extras when we can just scan a couple people's faces and put them onto digital doubles?
You can do that?
Yeah, that was
crazy.
So when the strikes were happening, the Hollywood strikes were happening, it was because of background actors and these bit players, where that's how a lot of people get started in the industry, is casting as a background in a big movie, or background in a TV show, or a bit player on a TV show, where they do a couple scenes in one episode and that's it, and they move on.
Yeah.
And they were looking at doing like these AI scans of people's faces and say, okay, we now own your likeness, and we're going to put your likeness into a bunch of other movies, and you're not going to get paid for it, because we're just going to do AI. And that was what the strike was about. And they ended up, I think they were successful in getting that out of like no longer allowing that to happen.
Wow.
So people will still go in and be able to get their jobs and things like that. And so, yeah, that type of thing is really destructive and really hurtful. But I don't see a sign of like certain big industries kind of not doing that, because again, they're looking at it from like a cost perspective.
Right.
As opposed to like, you're taking people's jobs away, and you should let people have their jobs.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel bad. Like, if you're in the industry, like, how do you get started if you can't start from the bottom?
Exactly. It would remove so many opportunities for people, and it would remove that human touch in a lot of these lower levels, whether it's like using AI for visual effects or AI for set design. I don't know, like so many different applications, and it just takes away that human element, that human artist touch to all the different pieces of like production.
Yeah, and there's something that you can't truly replicate with the human touch. Like that's one of the reasons why I like live music, like the CD version, or what you listen to on Spotify, whatever you want to call it, is very polished normally. But when you just listen to live music, even when they have a bum note every once in a while or something, but it's just there's just something I actually like it.
It feels raw. It feels real.
I like the imperfections.
Yeah,
you got the emotions. Maybe there's a little something off, but like as long as they're like overall really high quality musicians, I like that personally.
Yeah, because life is full of imperfections, and if art is supposed to imitate life, then like if art looks perfect, or this perfectly fake polished world, whether it's like filters on your Instagram or the way you project your life onto the social media, it's like, that's not real.
Right.
So then you may feel like it's escaping, but then you're still like, it's not real.
Yeah.
So
For sure, for sure. Well, that's awesome, man. So it sounds like you have a lot of just knowledge in your industry. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. You approached me at church. We were serving alongside each other, helping like set up and tear down. You had mentioned this idea of like starting like a group to get young adults, for lack of a better term, together and maybe doing pickleball and whatnot. And so you actually inspired me to do it. And we kind of co-led that and started a group, and it's really kicked off. We've had anywhere from, 10 to 20 people, depending on what night it was, doing like pickleball. With even like when the colder months, we've done game nights. We did an election watch party.
yeah.
What else have we done?
We've gone to see a couple movies. We've did like a worship night at my house. Yeah, all sorts of different types of things.
So you approached me about that, and I really believe that God's hand is on it personally. Like it's really taking off. I think it's helping a lot of people just have a sense of community, including us. What was the inspiration behind wanting to start something like that?
That's interesting. I don't know, man. It's kind of like we're both, in similar seasons of like young guys, single, at post college, and we're in our careers doing stuff. And the church that we're at is it's smaller. It's a very intimate group of people that is really growing really fast. But when something like that is happening, there's certain priorities, and then there's certain things that maybe aren't the priority right at the beginning. And so like young adults coming together to do church organized things may not be a priority when you're just trying to actually get used to the rhythm of like having church on Sundays. And for me, I'm not one to let something just kind of slide and just kind of be like, well, I'm going to wait for somebody else to do something about it. And I was like, you know what? We're both interested. We're both doing we're both interested in pickleball or just getting people together, building that community. So let's just start doing it. Yeah. And I also know what it's like to be in seasons where it's very isolating, where, I was on a church hunt for like probably 6 months, visited maybe not quite a dozen churches in Nashville as I was kind of like navigating my own personal thing of like what I believe church needed to look like and needed to be. And so many of these churches I walked into and no one talked to me. Like I'm walking in as a single guy by myself. Yeah. Some guys are just more approachable if they're walking in with, a lady or their spouse or their girlfriend. I don't know. Girls, I guess, can diffuse. They're less intimidating. I don't know.
Women are more trusting.
Not trying to be offensive.
I think women are more trusting just in general. Like, or at least they have the appearance of that.
Maybe it's just like a guy who has a girl with him just seems safer and more trustworthy to the outside viewer, I think is the point. So then when you walk into a place by yourself, some people are going to be like, if nobody's being intentional with that, they're just going to like let that slide. And so I went to multiple churches and nobody like really approached me, like asked me questions. Like as I was coming in and visiting, it was like hi, welcome to church. And that was it. That was like the only interaction in person that I had with anybody. And so then at Futures, it's much more connected. We're eating
Futures is
together.
The church we go to.
Futures is the church we go to. And it's, we have dinner together. The whole room has dinner together. We do church around tables. We don't do church in pews. And I knew how hard it was, especially like as a single person, to connect in church and then also connect in a new city. And so I knew that it was going to take creating a space outside of church to get people, to invite people. And we've had so many people in our group that have only lived here for like 3 to 6, 9 months, not even a full year. And I know how hard my first year in Nashville was, of just like trying to find that community of people that I trusted, people that actually like, it's not to say wait for somebody to come to you, but it means a lot when you're new to a town and somebody is inviting you to something.
Totally.
And I remember how much that meant to me. And I just wanted to continue that favor of like inviting people in, and then you start to see people more often, and then they start to get to know people and get more comfortable. And that I have just, that is super close to my heart, of just bringing people together and creating a space where people feel like they can be like be loved on, show that they're valuable, show that, you know, there's somebody that cares for them. And ultimately it just makes all the other challenges that come with living in a new place, it just makes those challenges a little easier to navigate.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have like a strong friendship circle and kind of finding your people. I'm curious, how do you feel the Capital C Church is serving young adults who are not married after the college?
Dang. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I've seen, maybe not as much as some people, but I've seen certain things, and I don't know. There's this thing where it's like most singles ministries and churches, or I don't know, from my experience, not maybe not all of them. Yours is maybe better. My experience has been a lot of like, this young adults ministry is so that guys and girls can meet each other and can start like, so that everybody can find a spouse. And sometimes there's small groups that like branch out into different things of like a little bit of, you know, a guys group here, a girls group here. They're getting discipled. They're doing their thing. Cool. I'm really glad that exists. I think a lot of things dedicated to young adults is very specific on like dating well, staying, you know, like focus on the word, focus on your relationship with God and all these things. And everybody tries to just package it. Not everybody, shouldn't use words like that. But a lot of people try to package it into something that is just very like step 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what you should be doing as a single person. And I think ultimately it comes down to if our relationship status is kind of, if we're letting it define our whole life and define how we see ourselves and how valuable we are as people, what we have to offer to the world. Because I believe that for a while, that like as a single guy, I was less valuable to like the world because I wasn't married. Like I couldn't do what I needed to do until I was married. And I think recently that has shifted a lot because I'm now singing singleness more as a gift, as something that like, okay, one day eventually I will have that to be able to give away and say, I'm saying goodbye to singleness in pursuit of this one person. But then you start to realize that like, okay, it's a gift and I do have a lot to offer the world. And then there's a huge level of responsibility that comes once you enter into a relationship. And so I think if the church focused more on actually helping young adults find that purpose apart and that identity apart from their relationship status, that would go a long way to actually creating young single people who are doing amazing, incredible things in their communities and in their spheres of influence, whatever that looks like. Like everybody has different ideas of what that is. And that's not to knock, you know, obviously not to knock the people that found their spouse really young or, you know, they're married younger. But I think if we want to be, what am I trying to say here? Yeah, I think the church as a whole should be speaking more to actually treating singles apart from like that actual relationship.
Right. It's like
status.
it's not like for lack of better wording, hey, it's like, whoa, you're past 25 now and you're out of college, like when you gonna get married kind of a thing. And it's like that's not like my only purpose in life is to just get married. Like
it's a beautiful gift. It's a beautiful responsibility. Totally. And, you know, I hope to be married one day, but I'm at the point now where I'm content where I'm at. And I am, I'm excited for what the future holds in that regard. But I don't tie my identity to just being a single person.
I think a lot of people have this feeling of like, oh, they're less than because they're past X age and they're not married yet. Yeah. And then they feel like they don't really have a place where they fit in and within our Christian bubble that we live in. Yeah. How can we do better? in this area
good
of like building community?
It's a good question. I think just taking the example of like what we've experienced at Futures is like a lot of, not every church is set up the way that ours is. And so whatever you're navigating in your church, if it's, if you're going to evangelical or non-denominational or Baptist or whatever it is, it's like just start to open up those avenues of community. If you see somebody at church that's around your age, sitting by themselves, like go up and introduce yourself and strike up a conversation and see what happens. Or go, if there's something going on, don't act like you're too cool to not go to it. Like just be like, I have no idea what this is going to happen. It may not be the funnest thing in the world, but I'm going to go, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to be there and see how I can bless people's lives.
You mean not be a flake?
Yeah, don't be a flake. Don't say you're going to go to something and not go. And
people do that.
Don't be not committal. And I think that's something that like I feel really bad if I say yes to something and I have to cancel. And sometimes I say yes to too much stuff and I have to say no every once in a while. But that is something that I think a lot of people do struggle with, is like, is it going to be worth it? Should I even show up at these things? And it's not even the sense of like trying to find a spouse if you're single, but it is like, show up and be willing to let God use you to build community in these spaces and in these places, because ultimately you have to be in community. You have to be in friendship with people to disciple them and to be discipled by them. And ultimately that's the whole point of the Great Commission for us as believers, is to make disciples of all nations, wherever they're close or further away. And you can't do that unless you start breaking out of your shell a little bit and talking to people that you may not normally talk to.
Yeah, and talking to the unexpected person who you might not like think initially would be like, oh, I'd be a great friend with this person or whatever. Right. My personal opinion, I could be wrong, but I think most people would agree we're in a loneliness epidemic in society in general. I think this applies to married people, single people. I've talked to married people who feel this way. I've talked to a lot of single people who feel lonely. And I believe that a negative response to this loneliness feeling is people will turn to different like coping methods, things like, drugs, alcohol, pornography, doom scrolling Instagram, like, and it's a negative response to this emotion of loneliness, and we're not fulfilling it. That we're not meeting that loneliness emotion in a legitimate way, which is actually just to have genuine friendships. My personal opinion is alcohol sales will go down. People will stop watching pornography if they just had good friends. Because if you had if your relational cup was filled and you had like solid friendships you can call, it's like you're not going to want to like turn to coping methods, because God created us to be in community, and it's like we're in this society now where it's like we have relationships that are like we're connected like a mile wide, but we're like a centimeter deep, when in reality we should be more like a mile deep and only a few wide, which is like kind of the heart of Futures too, of like deeper relationships, which it's been refreshing for sure.
And I think isolation, there's a lot of different pieces to that, but it's like people feel isolated when they don't feel like they belong somewhere.
They don't feel
like
seen.
They don't have a purpose. And I mean, and not they in just the general sense. Like I know I felt isolated when I've doubted what I'm doing. Is my work that I'm doing worthwhile? Am I spending my money in worthwhile ways? Am I wasting my time? Like I got super convicted at the beginning of 2024 about how many like just single player video games I was playing, where it's just very isolated. I'm just sitting in my room, just playing this game by myself. And I was like, oh, I think the Lord wants me to stop this. And that was a coping mechanism for me for some of my issues that I was avoiding. And so even something, like video games or even food, like just overeating or stress eating or emotionally eating, it's not always these really difficult, things, but there's a lot of good things that can then become too much that we use to overcompensate for those types of things. And so I think when you have something like loneliness, yes, connection does help. Knowing who you are helps. Knowing that your work that you're doing is what you're supposed to be doing helps. And I think it all starts with like being a good, like to have friends, you need to be a good friend. And so if you find yourself not surrounded by a group of really good people,
That's a good word right there.
You have to start showing yourself to be a good friend, whether it's literally the person that you see in the grocery store who's young, also probably searching and struggling with things.
Yeah.
Talk to them, or coworkers or neighbors or whatever it is, or go to social outings and start meeting people and making friendships, not meeting people for the sake of dating them or the sake
shopping.
of, yeah, exactly. It's literally like, no, let's see where these friendships can come from. So
yeah, that's one of my pet peeves is when people like shop for people.
Yeah.
Whether it's like, who can I like, it's a very transactional thing. And I think people can kind of pick up on it. It's like, if I'm like, who's the cool person that I want to be friends with, or who's the person I can network with for like businesses or to get ahead in whatever like career I'm in, or like who can I date? And it's like, you're looking, it's just like, it's like you're shopping for people.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's just not a, I don't know. I think we're more than just a transaction. I believe like we were meant to have genuine relationship and community with people. So
for sure,
yeah,
100%, man.
Well, we'll wrap this up here in just a little bit. But one thing I do want to say is I've appreciated your servant heart.
Thanks,
You're definitely you earn my respect, and I look up to your availability that you give yourself towards serving at church, and you're always just willing to give a helping hand. I just love to know like what cultivated that within you, because I think that's rare.
I don't even know, bro. I mean, I was serving at church when I was in 5th grade. I was still supposed to be in kids' church, and my parents were teaching the K through 2nd graders, and I was running sound in the back. And
how old?
I was in 5th grade. So
running sound, okay.
I don't even know how old I was. 11 or 12.
That's crazy.
I don't even know. And that was just something I really enjoyed doing, serving in that capacity. And that has just always been a part of my life. Like I've been in church for a long time, but I've always just found myself serving because I want to be a contributor to what's going on. I don't want to just be someone who's a consumer or a partaker of just whatever's going on in the church. And I think ultimately, like, there was a time in my life where I felt like a very selfish person, and I was a very selfish person, where just everything in my world, in my life, was about, being as efficient as I could be, or, only doing the things that made me feel good, or only being around the people that I liked, or only around the people that made me feel good, or just kind of this weird dynamic, especially in high school, where it just started to feel like I was becoming like very, very driven, but very selfish, and like kind of disregarding some of the people that were around me. And I just remember one of my friends who, she like conveyed to me that she, that there was like something very, very difficult that had happened to her like 2 weeks prior. And it was a very intense moment for me, because I had never heard of somebody who, it was that she had tried to take her own life.
Wow.
Like 2 weeks prior. And it was one of my friends. And I just like remember having that moment and of like, dang, I don't know. I just need to be more intentional about like seeing people. And she's doing a lot better now. That I'm very thankful that didn't happen. But it just made me be like, okay, check in on people more often, and not always from the concern of like, are you depressed? Are you in trouble?
Yeah.
It's just like, no, showing like Jesus showed that he cared for people. He was around them. He was with them. And as I started to mature in my faith, it was just this sense of like, no, I need to make sure that like, if the Lord has brought these people around me, like these are gifts. These are like people that the Lord values, and I need to value them too. And however I can do my part to make sure that they're taken care of and that they're served well and that their lives are fruitful and good. I've just tried to kind of do that in my own life, and a way to do that is just through serving, of just like, hey, I'm young, I have time, I'm strong.
Let's go.
I can move the tables and chairs for church to help set up, and I can, serve on CG or like for lyrics. It's like it's no issue for me, of like it's just not even a hesitation when somebody needs something, and when my friends need help moving, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just been a part of like, if I can show up for people, then I want to, because the Lord shows up for all of us every day, and
He does. Yeah.
whatever I can do with you can't take it with you, I guess, is the thing. You can't take money with you. You run out of time, so your life is only going to be like remembered by how you spent your time.
Yeah.
People are going to remember if you spent all your time playing video games. They may say some nice things about you at your funeral, but if all you did was play video games, that's what everybody's remembering in the back of their head.
Right.
And it's not to say that the goal is to be remembered, but knowing that you're leaving an impact and making an impact on the people around you by how you spend your time and by how you spend your money and take care of people, that to me is that's important to me.
Yeah. I love it. Well, good words. One thing I see in you is like, there's no task that's beneath you. And you've done some pretty cool stuff too. Like the stuff that you mentioned earlier in the pod of working with some pretty big ministries and different, musical artists and things. And then I also see, stacking chairs. So I love that about you.
Thanks, bro.
Last question. Here's my fake magic wand. I just waved it, and now you have unlimited resources, and you can to do your dream project, creative project. What are we doing?
Oh my gosh. Can't ask me questions like this. I'll be vague and brief with this, just because it is something that's like,
you can't give away all the secrets.
Can't give away all the secrets.
I get you. I got
it's
you.
It's very
man.
close to like
Okay.
still emotionally very close.
Okay.
And if I talk about it too much, it might sound silly.
Okay.
So I need to refine the ideas still more. But I love like the sci-fi genre, and it's not just because I love like lasers and cool starships and space and aliens, because I do love all those things as a nerd. But there's also so many cool things that you can like, philosophical themes, theological themes, things about just human drama, all this type of stuff, psychology, that you can put in a sci-fi film and people can receive it in such a cool and different and creative way through sci-fi than they would if you're just doing like a normal drama.
Yeah.
And so I actually have like a group of films and like kind of this whole sci-fi world that I've thought about and written down.
Really? Like your own universe?
Yeah. So like something
Wow.
like 35,000 words like written on this doc.
Are you
for all
serious?
that-
I didn't know
Yeah.
you had this in your arsenal.
I know. I don't
Wow.
talk about it very often, but it's basically this
A little
story
mini
of-
Tolkien or something.
I mean, it's this.
Yeah.
It's a story of this family and all of these different kind of challenges, where it's like, as everything that happens in kind of this sci-fi world with all these different planets and all these different conflicts and all these things that happen, it's all kind of built around these different like moments that people all relate to. So like in this, in the worlds like Star Wars, like everybody has like a starship.
Yeah.
And so like that moment of like, we've never seen in like Star Wars, what did it look like when somebody was like learning to fly for the first time? Everybody just kind of knows how to fly.
Right.
But then in that world, if you're like a family, learning to fly is going to be very similar to like learning to drive as a teenager. And so I feel like there's moments and ways to kind of build those different things where it's like, oh, that's kind of like that in real life, but it's in space and it's different and it's like different circumstances and context, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
And it ultimately is just kind of this story of like, when we don't receive, like it's kind of all these themes of orphanhood and like there's a lot of spiritual components woven into it, but like taking a risk and like I'm gonna adopt this this person, this teenage, boy in the story, the family, they bring him into their family, and he's full of like all this darkness and all this stuff is going on. But it's like, what does that journey look like for us as people when we are, when we're confronted with this kind of unconditional love? Like, what do we do when we, like, what happens when we accept that love? What happens if we reject that love? What's kind of that journey of maturing and all these things that happen? And there's a lot of pieces and a lot of components to it, a lot of different cool locales and different moments and big scenes and characters. Okay. And so it's not one that I can make right now. Got but it. Yeah, if I had an unlimited budget, I would put that story. I would put everything else away, write that, finish writing that, and make that.
Can I be a part of it?
Yeah, bro, come on.
Even just like a background character. I could be the guy who dies first.
I'll get you, paint you green, and get you some big alien ears. Okay. And
I don't mind if you write me in as the guy who dies first. So it's all good. Well, Grayson, it is a pleasure to have you, my friend.